"Oh," she whispered, "I'm not ready." But the rancher claimed her anyway, and it changed everything. The sun was just beginning to rise over the small town of Red Willow, casting a soft golden light across the fields that stretched as far as the eye could see. Elena clutched the straps of her small bag, her fingers trembling slightly. This was a new beginning for her, a chance to leave behind the struggles she had faced with her family and step into a life she had only dreamed of. Her heart beat fast, a mixture of fear and excitement filling her chest as she looked at the dusty road ahead, leading to her cousin's small farm, where she would live and work for the coming months. Elena had always been determined, but this was different. The town was quiet, almost too quiet, and she could hear the distant crowing of roosters and the soft rustle of leaves in the early morning breeze. She had never lived in a place like this before. The air smelled fresh and earthy, a welcome change from the cramped apartment in the city where she had spent most of her life. Yet, despite the beauty around her, she felt a tight knot in her stomach. She was stepping into the unknown, and the unknown was always frightening. As she walked along the dirt path, she noticed a large ranch house in the distance. Its wooden walls were weathered, and the wide porch looked like it had seen many seasons. Horses grazed in the fields nearby, and a few chickens pecked around the barn. Everything seemed peaceful, almost idyllic. Yet, Elena could not shake the feeling that life here would be very different from anything she had ever known. She was lost in thought when she heard the sound of hooves behind her. Turning quickly, she saw a man riding toward her on a tall, strong horse. His posture was straight, his face serious, and his eyes sharp, observing everything around him. Elena's heart skipped a beat. He was the rancher, Daniel, a man whose presence seemed to command respect from anyone nearby. She had heard stories about him before, how he ran his ranch with strength and fairness, how he took care of his workers, and how no one dared to challenge him. Daniel stopped his horse a few feet away, his gaze fixed on her. "You must be Elena," he said, his voice deep but not unkind.
I wasn't expecting you this early.
Elena swallowed hard.
Yes, sir.
I thought I should arrive early and get started." Her voice was soft, almost a whisper, but there was determination behind it. She wanted to show that she was serious about this new life, that she could handle whatever challenges lay ahead. Daniel dismounted smoothly, his boots hitting the ground with a soft thud. He walked toward her, studying her face. "Red Willow isn't like the city," he said. "Life here is hard, and it demands effort from everyone. Are you ready for that?" She had been ready in her mind, but hearing it spoken aloud made the reality sink in. I think so," she replied, though her voice wavered slightly. She did not want to appear weak, yet a small part of her feared she might not be enough for this place. Daniel nodded slowly, his eyes softening just a fraction. "I'll be honest with you," he said. "I expect my workers to give their best, but I also protect those under my responsibility. If you're here, I'm claiming you as someone I'll look after while you work on this ranch. That means your safety, your well-being, and your duties are mine to oversee." Elena blinked, taken aback. She had heard phrases like this before in old stories, in books about life on the ranch, but never imagined anyone would say it to her. Her mouth opened and she whispered, almost to herself, "I'm not ready." Daniel's expression did not change, but there was no anger in his eyes. "You don't have to be ready," he said firmly. "You just have to show up and do your part. The rest will come with time." Elena felt a rush of emotions, fear, confusion, and an unexpected flicker of hope. Here was a man who seemed strict, even intimidating, but his words carried a promise of guidance, of protection. She wanted to refuse, to turn around and run back to the safety of her old life. but something in his voice made her pause. She followed him toward the ranch, taking careful steps across the uneven ground. The air smelled faintly of hay and animals, a comforting scent that reminded her she was somewhere new, but also somewhere alive. Daniel spoke as they walked, giving her instructions on where she would sleep, where the barn was, and the routine she would need to learn. Every word was precise, every movement intentional. He clearly expected efficiency, but there was a rhythm to his speech that made her feel guided rather than controlled. By the time they reached the barn, Elena's nervousness had settled into a quiet, attentive focus. She watched as Daniel checked the horses, explaining which ones were gentle and which required careful handling. "You'll start with the basics," he said. "Feeding, cleaning, learning to handle the animals safely. Do it right, and you'll gain respect quickly. Fail, and you'll learn why respect matters here." Elena nodded, committing the instructions to memory. She could feel her heart racing, but this time it was not just fear, it was excitement. The work would be hard, but she wanted to prove herself. She wanted to show that she could belong here, even if the beginning felt overwhelming. As the morning sun rose higher, casting long shadows across the fields, Daniel finally turned to her. "You'll get used to this," he said, his tone lighter now. "Life here is different from what you've known, but it's honest. And if you work hard, you'll find something you won't get in the city. A place where your efforts matter, where people see what you do and appreciate it." Elena looked around, taking in the rolling fields, the barns, the animals, and the quiet strength of the man standing before her. She still felt uncertain, but for the first time since she had arrived in Red Willow, maybe this life, so foreign and daunting at first, could become hers. Daniel handed her a small bundle, a notebook, some tools, and basic instructions for the day's work. "Learn fast, work smart, and don't be afraid to ask questions," he said. "I'll be watching, and I'll help when needed. That's part of claiming you." Elena took the bundle, her fingers brushing his briefly. A shiver ran down her spine, not from fear, but from the realization that her life had just shifted in a way she could not have imagined. "Ah!" she whispered again, this time more to herself than to him. "I'll try." Daniel nodded once, satisfied with her response, and returned to his tasks. Elena watched him for a moment, marveling at the balance between his strength and quiet patience. She knew this man could be stern and demanding, but she also sensed that beneath the firm exterior was someone who valued loyalty, effort, and courage. The rest of the morning passed in a blur of new sensations and small victories. Elena fed the horses, learned to handle the stubborn ones, and carried water buckets across the barn. She stumbled a few times, but Daniel's watchful eyes ensured she did not falter too far. With each task completed, a tiny piece of her fear melted away, replaced by determination. By noon, she was exhausted but exhilarated. The sun was high, casting a warm glow across the ranch, and Elena realized she had done more than she thought possible. Daniel approached her again, his face unreadable, but his tone carried a hint of approval. "Not bad for your first day," he said. "Keep this up and you'll find life here isn't as daunting as it seems." Elena smiled, tired but genuinely happy. She knew the days ahead would be hard, that she would have to work long hours and face challenges she had never imagined, but for the first time, she also felt that she could handle it. Maybe she was ready, at least, ready enough to try. As the day drew to a close, Elena stood on the porch of the ranch house, looking out over the fields bathed in the orange glow of sunset. She felt a strange mix of fear, excitement, and anticipation. Red Willow was quiet, the world seemingly at peace, But she knew this calm was only the beginning of a life that would challenge her, change her, and, in ways she could not yet see, define her. And as she whispered to herself once more, "I'm not ready, but maybe I can be," she felt a small, steady warmth in her chest, a sense that, despite the fear, this life, this ranch, and this man named Daniel might just become something she could belong to. The next morning, Elena woke to the soft crowing of roosters and the gentle warmth of the sun streaming through the window. Her muscles ached from the first day's work, but instead of discouragement, she felt a quiet pride. She had faced her fears and handled more than she had thought possible. Pulling on her boots, she prepared herself for another day at the ranch, determined to prove that she could belong here, even if it was still unfamiliar. Downstairs, the kitchen smelled faintly of coffee and fresh bread. Daniel was already there, sitting at the wooden table, sipping slowly from a mug. He looked up as she entered, his eyes observing her with the same intensity she had felt the day before. "Good morning," he said simply. "You slept well?" Elena nodded, still a little shy. "Yes, sir. I think I'm getting used to the quiet here." Daniel set down his mug and studied her for a moment. "Quiet doesn't mean easy," he said. "Life on this ranch requires work, patience, and focus. You'll need to prove yourself every day, not just with your hands, but with your mind. Do you understand?" "I understand," she replied. She had been thinking about his words since yesterday, realizing that her presence here was not just about helping her cousin or finding a new home. It was about learning a way of life that demanded discipline and courage. After breakfast, Daniel led her to the barn again, where the horses were already grazing in the fields. "Today, you'll start with the basics of grooming and feeding. Watch carefully, then do it yourself. Mistakes are part of learning, but carelessness is not." Elena nodded and watched him work with the horses. His hands moved with confidence and precision, and his calm but firm voice guided her through each step. When she finally began grooming a horse herself, she felt the animal's warmth and strength under her hands. She realized that the work was harder than she had imagined, but it was also deeply satisfying. Each stroke of the brush and every bucket of water brought a small sense of accomplishment. By mid-morning, Elena was sweaty and tired, but Daniel's approving nod gave her courage to keep going. "Not bad," he said. "You're learning faster than I expected." Elena's cheeks flushed with pride, but she quickly looked down, afraid to seem too pleased with herself. Daniel noticed, though he said nothing, and returned to his tasks. She understood that praise was rare and meaningful on this ranch, and that made it all the more valuable. As the hours passed, Elena began to notice the small rhythms of ranch life. Chickens clucked as they pecked the ground, the horses shifted in their stalls, and the wind whispered through the tall grass. Each sound was a reminder that this was a living, breathing place, full of challenges and rewards. She felt a growing sense of connection to the land, even if it was still new to her. But as the day continued, Elena also began to feel the weight of the responsibility Daniel had spoken about. She noticed the way he watched her closely, his eyes sharp and attentive. It was not intimidating, but it reminded her that he expected effort, honesty, and respect. Every action she took was observed, every mistake noted. The awareness made her nervous at times, but it also motivated her to try harder. During a short break by the edge of the pasture, Elena sat down on a fence post and looked out at the sprawling fields. The sun was high and a soft breeze cooled her flushed skin. She thought about her life before Red Willow: crowded apartments, endless noise, constant pressure, and realized how different this place was. Here, every effort had meaning, every day offered a new lesson. It was harder than she had expected, but it was also more real. Daniel approached quietly, carrying a bucket of water. "You're doing well," he said, setting it down beside her. "But don't forget, the work doesn't end with the animals. The land needs tending, the fences need checking, and the chores are never truly finished." Elena nodded. "I know, sir. I want to learn everything." He studied her for a moment, as if weighing her determination. "Good," he said finally. "Keep that attitude and you'll go far here. But remember, respect and patience are as important as strength. You can't rush this life, and you can't force others to see your worth. You have to earn it." Elena absorbed his words quietly, realizing that he was teaching more than just ranch work. He was teaching her how to survive, how to grow, and how to be seen in a place that demanded both resilience and humility. The rest of the afternoon passed with a series of small lessons. She learned to carry hay bales, to mend a broken fence post, and to calm a skittish horse. Daniel observed her every move, offering corrections and encouragement in equal measure. There were moments when she wanted to give up, when her arms ached and her back throbbed, but Daniel's steady presence reminded her that she was capable of more than she knew. At one point, a young horse stumbled and Elena instinctively rushed forward to steady it. Daniel was there in an instant, guiding her hands and calming the animal. "Careful," he said, his voice calm but firm. "Rushing doesn't help. You need patience, not speed." Elena took a deep breath and followed his instructions. The horse relaxed under her touch, and she felt a surge of relief and pride. She realized that these lessons were about more than just the animals. They were about herself. She was learning to stay calm under pressure, to think before acting, and to trust in her own abilities. By evening, the sun began to dip toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Elena was exhausted, but there was a quiet satisfaction in her heart. She had survived the day, learned new skills, and, for the first time, felt like she belonged here. Daniel approached her again as she was collecting the tools. "You did well today," he said. "Not perfect, but well. Remember, perfection isn't expected. Effort and consistency are. If you keep this up, you'll find your place here." Elena looked up at him, feeling a warmth she had not expected. There was something reassuring about the way he spoke, not just as a rancher giving instructions, but as someone who cared about her growth and safety. She nodded quietly, her mind already thinking about tomorrow and what it would bring. As she prepared to leave the barn, she glanced at the fields stretching out before her. They looked different now than they had yesterday. They were not just land to be worked, they were a place of possibility, a canvas on which she could prove herself. She felt a mixture of fear and excitement, knowing that every day would bring challenges, but also the chance to grow stronger, wiser, and more capable. Daniel's voice called from the porch. "Dinner will be ready soon, don't be late." Elena smiled softly, a small laugh escaping her lips. "I won't, sir." Walking back to the house, she felt a sense of purpose she had never known before. Red Willow was still new, still uncertain, but she was beginning to feel that maybe, just maybe, she could belong here. The work was hard, the days were long, and the expectations were high, but there was also a sense of honesty and meaning that she had never experienced in her life before. As night fell and the stars appeared over the wide-open fields, Elena lay in bed, reflecting on the day. She thought about the challenges, the small victories, and the guidance Daniel had given her. She realized that her fear was slowly giving way to determination, that her hesitation was being replaced with a quiet confidence. And though she still whispered to herself, "I'm not ready," the words no longer carried the same weight of fear. Instead, they were a reminder that growth took time, that learning was a journey, and that she was taking the first steps toward a life that could be more than she had ever imagined. Tomorrow, she would wake to another day of work, another day of lessons, another day to prove herself. And for the first time since arriving in Red Willow, Elena felt a flicker of excitement for what was to come. The next morning, Elena awoke to a sky streaked with gray clouds. The air smelled different, heavy and wet, carrying the scent of an approaching storm. She rubbed her eyes and felt a slight unease. Living on the ranch meant facing challenges every day, but the unpredictability of weather was one of the hardest. She quickly dressed and went downstairs, her heart racing as she noticed Daniel already in the kitchen, reading a small notebook. "Storm coming," he said without looking up. "Heavy rain, strong winds. We'll need to secure the animals and the barns quickly. Are you ready?" Elena swallowed hard. "I'll do my best, sir." Daniel finally looked up and gave her a nod.
Good. That's all I ask.
"Follow my lead and stay focused. This is serious work, and mistakes could be dangerous." The words sent a shiver down her spine. She had worked hard on the ranch, but this was different. Nature could not be predicted or controlled, and the responsibility she now shared with Daniel felt heavier than ever. Yet there was also a thrill in the challenge, a feeling she had never experienced in her life before. By the time they reached the barn, the clouds had grown darker, and the wind was beginning to whip through the fields. Horses whinnied nervously, and chickens scurried under the eaves of the coop. Daniel moved quickly, giving clear instructions to secure the animals, tie down loose equipment, and check the fences. Elena followed him closely, her hands busy but her mind alert, absorbing every instruction. The first task was to gather the horses and lead them into the stalls. Some were calm while others were restless, sensing the storm. Elena took a deep breath and approached a young mare that had been skittish all morning. She remembered Daniel's lessons, the patience, the careful movements, the calm voice. Speaking softly, she stroked the horse's mane and gently guided her toward the stall. The mare resisted at first, but Elena remained steady. When the animal finally stepped inside, she felt a surge of pride and relief. "Good work," Daniel said, noticing her success. "See, patience pays off. Don't rush, and you'll earn trust from animals and people alike." Elena nodded, feeling more confident as they moved on to the next task. Together, they secured the fences, checking for any weak points that could be dangerous during the storm. Every gust of wind made the wooden posts creak, but Elena kept her focus, repeating Daniel's instructions in her mind. The rain began lightly at first, then heavier, pounding against the barn roof and soaking the fields. The sky darkened, and lightning split the horizon. The thunder rolled across the hills, making the ground tremble beneath her feet. Elena's heart pounded, not just from fear of the storm, but from the awareness of how vulnerable they were out here, surrounded by animals and open fields. Daniel stayed calm, moving with precision and purpose. "Stay close," he called over the wind. "Work fast, but don't panic. Everything we secure now will save hours of damage later." Elena worked tirelessly, her arms aching from lifting hay bales and tying down equipment. The rain soaked her clothes, clinging to her skin, but she refused to stop. She had learned the hard way that hesitation on the ranch could lead to mistakes, and she wanted to prove herself. She wanted Daniel to see that she could handle more than just the ordinary day-to-day tasks. She could rise to a challenge. Suddenly, a strong gust of wind tore a section of the barn roof loose, sending a large wooden panel sliding dangerously close to the horses. Elena froze for a moment, her heart racing. But Daniel was already moving, steadying the panel with strong hands. "Quick, help me," he shouted. Adrenaline surged through Elena's veins. She ran forward, grabbing the other end of the panel. and together they forced it back into place. The horses remained calm, trusting the two of them, and Elena realized that the storm was teaching her more than just physical work. It was teaching her courage, quick thinking, and teamwork. By mid-afternoon, the worst of the storm had passed, but the damage was visible. A fence had collapsed near the field. Some hay was soaked, and the animals were restless. Elena's clothes were drenched, her hair plastered to her face, but she felt alive. She had faced fear head-on and survived, and that realization gave her a sense of strength she had never known. Daniel approached her, a rare smile touching his lips. "You handled yourself well," he said. "I knew you had it in you, but today you proved it." Elena blinked, surprised by the praise. She had expected criticism, a lecture about what could have gone wrong, but instead, Daniel acknowledged her effort and courage. She felt a warmth spread through her chest, a mix of relief and pride. "Thank you, sir," she said softly. I didn't think I could do it at first, but I tried my best." Daniel nodded. "Trying is the first step. Strength comes from effort. Courage comes from action. You've shown both today." They worked together for the rest of the afternoon, repairing fences, moving wet hay into dry storage, and calming the animals. Every task was tiring, but Elena no longer felt overwhelmed. She had learned to trust her instincts, to follow instructions, and to act with confidence even under pressure. As evening approached, the storm clouds finally parted, revealing a golden sunset that reflected off the wet fields. Elena stood on the porch of the barn, exhausted but triumphant, and watched the sky. She could still hear the soft whinny of the horses and the gentle clucking of chickens, and it all felt peaceful now, as if the storm had cleansed the ranch and renewed it. Daniel joined her, handing her a dry towel and a cup of warm tea. "Tut, here," he said. "You've earned this." Elena took the cup, feeling the warmth seep into her hands. She sipped carefully, savoring the simple comfort after a long, hard day. I never thought I could handle something like that," she admitted. "It was scary, but also incredible." Daniel nodded thoughtfully. "Fear is natural. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's moving forward despite it. Today you learned that firsthand." Elian smiled softly. She realized that her relationship with Daniel was changing too. He was no longer just a strict authority figure. He had become someone she could rely on, someone who guided her and trusted her to rise to challenges. She felt a sense of connection that went beyond work. It was built on mutual respect and shared experience. As the stars began to appear in the night sky, Elena felt a quiet contentment. The storm had tested her in ways she had never imagined, but it had also revealed strengths she hadn't known she possessed. She thought about the days ahead, the work, the challenges, the lessons, and felt a new sense of readiness. Daniel spoke quietly, breaking her thoughts. "Tomorrow will bring new tasks and maybe new challenges. But remember what you learned today. You're stronger than you think, and you're capable of more than you realize." Elena nodded, feeling the truth in his words. She had faced fear, uncertainty, and physical strain, and she had come through it. The bond she was forming with Daniel, built on trust and shared effort, felt stronger now. She realized that life on the ranch was not just about labor. It was about growth, resilience, and discovering what she was truly capable of. That night, as she lay in bed, Elena reflected on the events of the day. The storm had been terrifying, yes, but it had also been transformative. She no longer whispered the words, "I'm not ready," with fear in her heart. Instead, she felt a quiet determination, a readiness to face whatever came next. The storm had tested her courage, and she had passed. And in the quiet moments before sleep, she thought about Daniel, not just as a teacher or a guide or someone who had claimed her on the ranch, but as a person who had helped her discover her own strength. She felt gratitude, admiration, and a growing trust that perhaps, with him, she could face anything. Tomorrow would bring more work, more lessons, and perhaps more challenges. But for the first time, Elena felt that she was truly ready, not perfect, not fearless, but ready to meet life head-on, one step at a time, with courage and determination. The next morning, the ranch was quiet, the air crisp with the coolness of early dawn. The storm from the previous day had left the fields wet and sparkling under the sun, and the scent of fresh earth filled Elena's lungs as she stepped outside. Today the work seemed lighter, not because it was easier, but because she felt stronger. The storm had changed her. It had shown her that she could face challenges she had never imagined, and that gave her confidence she had not felt before. Daniel was already outside, checking the fences and making sure the animals were safe. He glanced up as Elena approached and gave her a nod. "Good morning," he said. His tone was softer than usual, and Elena noticed the faint smile that tugged at the corner of his lips. "Good morning, sir," Elena replied, her voice steady. There was a calmness in her words that had not been there before, a quiet assurance that reflected the lessons of the storm. "You did well yesterday," Daniel said, gesturing toward the barn. "The horses are calm, the fences are mostly secure, and the animals are fed. But today, I want to focus on something different. I want you to learn not just how to work on this ranch, but how to understand it, and yourself, better." Elena tilted her head, curious. "Understand myself, sir?" Daniel nodded.
Yes, life on a ranch isn't only about physical labor.
"It's about patience, observation, and knowing what to do even when things are uncertain. Sometimes it's about learning to trust others and letting them trust you. Today, I want to see how you handle that." Elena felt a flutter of nerves, but also a spark of excitement. She had already begun to learn patience and courage, but trust was a new and complicated challenge. She followed Daniel as he led her to a smaller pasture where a few young horses grazed. "These horses are skittish," he explained. "They've had little contact with humans, and they're not used to guidance. You'll work with them today not just to feed or groom, but to earn their trust. Watch, move slowly, speak softly, and let them approach you." Elena took a deep breath. She remembered the lessons from yesterday, the patience, the calm movements, the steady voice. She knelt beside one of the horses, a small brown filly with wide, wary eyes. Speaking softly, she offered her hand, letting the horse sniff and examine her. The filly flinched, then took a cautious step closer. Helena held her breath, careful not to make sudden movements. Slowly, she stroked the horse's neck, feeling the warmth of its body beneath her hand. Daniel watched silently from a few steps away, his eyes sharp but approving. "Good," he said quietly. "Patience and gentleness. That's how trust begins." As the morning passed, Elena worked with several horses, each one teaching her more about herself. She learned to remain calm under pressure, to read the animals' subtle signals, and to adjust her actions based on their reactions. It was a lesson in empathy as much as it was in ranch work, and she felt herself growing more confident and connected with the animals. Around mid-morning, Daniel walked up beside her, carrying a bucket of water. "You've done well with the horses," he said, "but there's more to trust than handling animals. People require it too. Let's talk." Elena looked up, a little surprised. "Talk?" "Yes," Daniel replied. I want you to understand that trust is earned in steps. Just as you've gained the horse's trust by showing patience and consistency, people will trust you when they see who you are and when they know you are reliable. It isn't always easy, and it takes time. They sat on a fallen log near the pasture, the sun warming their backs. Elena felt a strange nervousness, realizing that this was more than just a lesson in ranch work. It was personal. I've never had someone explain trust like this before, she admitted. I mean, I've been told to trust people, but I didn't always know how. Daniel nodded slowly. Trust isn't just given, it's built. People watch your actions, notice your effort, and see your honesty. It's the same here on the ranch as it is anywhere else. Show who you are through what you do, not just what you say. Elena thought about his words, feeling them resonate deeply. She realized that her fear of being claimed on the ranch had lessened because she had begun to understand what it meant. Not ownership or control, but care, guidance, and responsibility. She had started to see Daniel not just as a teacher, but as someone who genuinely wanted to help her grow. "Sir," she said softly, "I think I understand. A little." It's like proving yourself through action, not just words. Daniel smiled faintly, a rare warmth in his eyes. Exactly. And that applies to more than just work. Life will test you, Elena, in ways you can't always predict. The storm yesterday, these horses today, they're practice for bigger challenges, for moments when courage and patience will mean everything. For the next few hours, they worked together in silence, tending to the fields and checking the fences. The work was steady and rhythmic, giving them time to reflect and to grow comfortable with each other's presence. Elena began to notice small gestures from Daniel. How he waited for her to finish a task before moving on, how he explained rather than commanded, how he offered encouragement without pressure. She felt a sense of respect and trust growing, and it made her feel safer and more confident. By midday, they took a break under the shade of a large oak tree. Elena poured herself a drink of water, feeling the sun on her damp skin and the soft breeze through her hair. She looked at Daniel, who was quietly watching the fields. For the first time, she felt like she could speak freely. "Sir," she began hesitantly, "can I ask about you, about why you do all this? I mean, why take care of people like me and the ranch and everything?" Daniel paused, considering her question. "I suppose it comes from my own experience," he said slowly. "I lost a lot when I was younger. People I trusted, responsibilities I wasn't prepared for. It taught me that guidance, patience, and support matter. That's why I run this ranch the way I do. I want people to grow, to learn, to be stronger than they might believe themselves to be." Elena listened quietly, sensing a depth to his words that she hadn't noticed before. There was a vulnerability there, a hint of past struggles that shaped the man she had thought was only stern and commanding. She realized that the ranch was more than a place of work. It was a place of learning, not just for her, but for everyone who lived and worked there. I understand," she said softly. "You've been through a lot, and now you're helping others, teaching them what you learned." Daniel nodded. "Exactly. And you've shown that you're willing to learn, willing to face challenges. That makes all the difference." Elena felt a warmth in her chest, a mix of admiration, gratitude, and trust. She realized that her feelings about Daniel were changing. He was no longer just a strict guide, or the man who claimed her on the ranch. He was someone she respected, someone she could rely on, and someone whose opinion mattered to her in ways she hadn't expected. The afternoon passed with more lessons. tending the fields, repairing a small section of fence, and preparing the horses for the evening. Elena worked diligently, her movements confident and precise. She noticed how Daniel watched her, sometimes silently, sometimes offering a few words of guidance. She no longer felt nervous under his gaze. Instead, she felt supported and challenged in a way that inspired her. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, they returned to the ranch house. Elena was tired, but it was a satisfying tiredness, the kind that comes from effort and accomplishment. Daniel handed her a towel and a glass of water, and she realized how much she had grown since her arrival. She was stronger, braver, and more confident than she had been. Sitting on the porch, watching the last rays of sunlight fade over the fields, Elena reflected on the day. She had learned more than just ranch work. She had learned about trust, patience, and resilience. She had discovered that courage was not about fearlessness, but about action in the face of uncertainty. And most importantly, she had begun to understand the quiet strength of the man who had guided her. Daniel. "Thank you, sir," she said quietly, her voice carrying a sincere warmth, "for everything today and for believing in me." Daniel looked at her, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "You did the work, Elena. I only showed you the way. You proved yourself, and that's what matters." As night fell over the ranch and stars appeared in the clear sky, Elena felt a sense of peace and purpose she had never known. She realized that her fear of being claimed had faded, replaced by respect, trust, and a growing bond that was built on shared effort and understanding. She whispered to herself once more, but this time the words carried a different meaning. "I think I'm ready." And for the first time since she had arrived in Red Willow, Elena felt that her life on the ranch was not just a challenge to survive, but an opportunity to grow, to trust, and to belong in a way she had never imagined possible. The morning sun rose slowly over Red Willow, casting warm, golden light across the fields. The storm from earlier days was long gone, leaving the air fresh and the earth soft underfoot. Elena stepped outside the ranch house, taking a deep breath. She felt stronger now, more confident, and ready for whatever challenges the day might bring. The work on the ranch had become a rhythm in her life, hard, demanding, but honest, and she no longer felt like an outsider. Daniel was already in the barn, tending to the horses. He looked up as Elena approached and gave her a nod. "Morning," he said simply, his usual calm tone carrying an undercurrent of approval. "You're early." Elena smiled, brushing her damp hair from her face.
I want to get started, sir.
"There's a lot to do today." He studied her for a moment and then nodded. "Good. That's the right attitude. Today we'll finish some of the repairs from the storm and check the fences again. And I'll have you handle more of the animals on your own to see how much you've learned." Elena's heart quickened, not with fear, but with excitement. She had come a long way since her first day, and she was eager to prove to herself just how capable she had become. She followed Daniel into the barn, moving with confidence and purpose. The morning passed quickly, each task completed with care and precision. Elena groomed the horses, carried water, and repaired broken fencing with skills she had gained over the past days. Daniel watched quietly, offering guidance only when necessary. He no longer had to correct her as often. She had learned the routines, understood the animals, and could anticipate the needs of the ranch. By midday, the sun was high and the work was nearly done. Elena paused to wipe sweat from her forehead and looked out over the fields. The land stretched endlessly before her, bright and alive in the sunlight, and she felt a deep connection to it. This place, once so foreign and intimidating, had become a part of her life. She had grown stronger, braver, and more capable than she had ever imagined. Daniel approached, carrying a bucket of feed. He handed it to Elena with a rare smile. "You've done well," he said. "More than well, actually. You've proven yourself. You've worked hard, stayed patient, and shown courage. That's why I trust you." Elena felt a warmth in her chest. His words meant more to her than she could explain. "Thank you, sir," she said quietly. I couldn't have done it without your guidance." He shook his head. "No, you did it yourself. I only pointed the way. The strength and courage came from you." For a long moment they stood in the quiet barn, watching the horses move calmly in their stalls. There was a sense of peace between them, a shared understanding that had grown over the past days. Elena realized that her feelings for Daniel had shifted. She no longer saw him as only a teacher or the man who claimed responsibility for her on the ranch. She saw him as someone who respected her, trusted her, and believed in her abilities. And she felt a growing trust and admiration for him in return. Later, as they walked across the fields to check the fences, Daniel spoke quietly. "Elena, the work on this ranch is never truly done. There will always be challenges, storms, and unexpected problems, but that's part of what makes it meaningful. You face them, you learn from them, and you grow stronger." Elena nodded thoughtfully. "I understand now. I see how every task, every responsibility helps me grow. I feel more capable than I ever have before." Daniel stopped walking and turned to her. "And you should feel that way. You've earned it. You've proven yourself, not just to me, but to yourself."
That's the most important part. Elena felt a rush of gratitude and pride.
She had begun this journey uncertain and hesitant, whispering to herself that she wasn't ready. But now, standing in the sunlight, surrounded by the fields she had learned to care for, she realized that she had grown in ways she hadn't imagined. She was ready, not perfect, not fearless, but ready to face life on the ranch and to face the challenges that came with it. As the day continued, they repaired a section of fence together. Daniel demonstrated how to secure the posts properly, and Elena followed his lead, moving with precision and care. The work was hard, but satisfying. Each nail hammered, each board secured, was a small victory. Elena felt the rhythm of the ranch, the satisfaction of labor, and the joy of accomplishment. By late afternoon, the work was done. The fences were sturdy, the animals fed and calm, and the barn in order. Elena stood on the porch of the ranch house, looking out over the fields. The sun was beginning to set, casting a golden glow that made the land seem almost magical. She felt a sense of peace, accomplishment, and belonging that she had never known. Daniel joined her, carrying 2 mugs of tea. He handed one to her and leaned against the railing beside her. For a moment, they watched the sunset in comfortable silence, the colors reflecting off their faces. "You've changed since you arrived," Daniel said quietly. "You're stronger, more confident, and more capable. I'm proud of what you've accomplished." Elena smiled softly. "Thank you, sir, for guiding me, for believing in me, and for giving me a chance. I feel like I finally understand what it means to belong somewhere, to be part of something bigger than myself." Daniel nodded. "And you do belong here, Elena. Not just because of the work you've done, but because of who you are, your strength, your courage, your willingness to learn. These make you part of this ranch, part of this life." For the first time, Elena felt a sense of true acceptance. She had come to Red Willow uncertain, afraid, and hesitant. But through hard work, courage, and trust, she had found her place. She realized that her relationship with Daniel had grown into one of mutual respect and understanding. She trusted him, and he trusted her. Together, they had faced challenges, learned lessons, and grown stronger, not just as individuals, but as partners in life on the ranch.
As the sky darkened and stars began to appear, Elena felt a quiet joy.
The ranch was no longer just a place of work. It was a home. The fields, the animals, and the daily routines had become familiar and comforting. She realized that the life she had feared would be too hard or too unfamiliar had become a life she cherished, a life that had shaped her into someone stronger, braver, and more capable than she had ever imagined. Daniel looked at her, his eyes reflecting the soft light of the stars. "You're ready now, Elena. Not just for the ranch, but for whatever comes next. Life here will challenge you, but you're prepared for it. And you won't face it alone." Elena took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his words. She realized that she no longer whispered, "I'm not ready." Instead, she felt a quiet strength and determination. She was ready to face the future, to continue learning, growing, and contributing to the life they were building together on the ranch. "Thank you, Daniel," she said softly, "for everything, for guiding me, trusting me, and helping me find my place here."
I'm ready, he smiled, a genuine warmth in his eyes.
"I never doubted you would be." As they stood together on the porch, watching the stars twinkle over the fields, Elena felt a deep sense of peace and contentment. She had come to Red Willow uncertain and afraid, but she had found her strength, her courage, and her place. The ranch, once intimidating and unknown, had become a home. And Daniel, once a stern guide and protector, had become a partner, a mentor, and someone she could trust and rely on. The night was quiet, filled only with the soft sounds of the animals settling in for the evening and the gentle rustle of the wind through the trees. Elena closed her eyes for a moment, breathing in the fresh air, and felt a profound sense of gratitude. She had faced fear, challenges, and uncertainty, and had emerged stronger, wiser, and more confident. Red Willow was no longer just a place she had arrived at hesitantly. It was her home. The ranch, the land, the animals, and the people she had come to trust had shaped her, taught her, and given her a new sense of purpose. She realized that the life she had feared would be too difficult had become the life she cherished most, and as she whispered softly to herself, this time with certainty and hope, she knew it was true. She was ready. Ready for the ranch, ready for life, and ready for the future she had begun to build with Daniel by her side.